All right, you ready to roll?
Sure.
All right. That was enthusiastic.
Sorry. Sorry, I just jumped in a little late. That's all. Okay.
Okay, everybody.
Entering the 1997-98 NBA season, the Chicago Bulls had won 5 championships in the previous 7 years. But as they sought their second three-peat, the future of the dynasty was in doubt. As preparations began for the 1997-98 season, Jordan and the Bulls granted unprecedented access to a film crew for the entire year. As Jordan was preparing to conclude his time with the Bulls, 3 friends in Toronto were about to graduate from university. This is their story as seen through the ESPN Netflix docu-series The Last Dance. Welcome to episode 3 of Jordan Ain't No Joke. My name is Sammy Younan, and in honor of Jerry Seinfeld's Last Dance cameo, why don't you guys introduce yourselves and your favorite 90s must-see TV show?
How's it going, everybody? Thank you for joining us again for episode 3 of the podcast. And I am JT, and my pick for the 90s sitcom. I mean, does it have to be a sitcom, or can it be just any
TV show? Any live.
Wow. Okay. So we can't say Seinfeld. So I'll skip
Why not
that.
say Seinfeld?
Okay. Well, because technically, as of his appearance in the doc, it was actually his last season.
Mm-hmm.
Was it not?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so Seinfeld's on the table. Let's just make that an assumption. I think probably. I think was Cheers done by then?
Yep. Well, it went 11 years, and it started around 80.
Mm-hmm.
So, 93, 94 was when it's done.
That counts.
So yeah, I'll throw in Cheers.
Okay. What about you, Dan?
Oh, what shows of the 90s? So many good ones. Wonder Years. Even though it kicked off from 88 to 93. I think one of the most iconic shows from the 90s, and Simpsons, I would have to say, because I think that's around 89.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Simpsons was that would have been just on the come up and just hitting its sort of cultural phenomenon stride.
I gotta go with the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Nice.
Yeah, that's your classic 90s jam. Still holds up though.
If you say so.
All right. We're going to move along now because that was awkward. So.
Jazz holds up, I think, in the show.
Yo. Oh, man. We'll have to do like an After Dark episode or something where we get into the Fresh Prince and just Anyways, we'll put that aside for now. Last time, I joked that episode 4 should have been called The New Hope. Because that was the introduction of Phil Jackson. Denny, what do you think of title for episode 5?
So many possible titles for this one. But let's see, I can't just think of one. It's just some of the things that kind of popped in my head was shit. That's all I heard. I guess that could be across episode 5 and 6, but just Jordan saying shit.
Yeah. There's some North Carolina still with them, eh?
Yeah, man. But that's kind of like the that Budweiser commercial from the 90s for me. The guys would be like, "What's up?"
Yeah.
Well, it's also that character from The Wire, which is much later, but he was infamous for using that shit, slang. But in this case, hearing Michael say that in the locker room when he's giving, I'm not sure who he was giving that extra ticket to.
Randy Brown.
Yeah.
For Randy Brown, yeah. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's how Randy Brown got in the stadium.
The ticket was for Randy Brown so he could
sit on the bench.
Sit on the bench, exactly.
But no, okay, all fairness, Randy Brown was a real good defender back in those days.
No, I know. I'm just giving him a hard time.
No, I know. But yeah, I mean that's one of the titles that came up for me. What about you, Sam? What title might have popped up for you for episode 5?
The incorporation, just because that was a lot of the business stuff with the Nike stuff, and just kind of seeing how that empire got built up. It's crazy because again, it's just like we see that Converse commercial, and then like that was the cool one. By the way,
Yep.
how did they get Larry Bird to like start rapping and smiling in a commercial? What they put in his orange juice or something? Because you don't usually see that kind of Larry Bird.
Yeah, it was kind of that Converse commercial with Magic Bird and who was the third person?
Bernard
there?
King.
Bernard King. Yeah, it was really awkward. Like it was almost like, the geniuses in marketing came up with this, and these guys just showed up and were asked to do this, and it just came off as really dated,
Mm-hmm.
and so it makes a really amazing contrast to what comes after with Michael.
What's kind of interesting about that segment right there, you had Michael's agent David Falk talking about shopping him around, and then a commercial's playing. In that commercial, like you guys said, there's Magic, there's Bird, there's Bernard King, but Isaiah Thomas is also in that commercial, and so was Mark McGuire. But when you have David Falk talking about it in voiceover, he doesn't mention those two guys. So I don't know if that's intentional or if that's just something like that he just kind of forgot or whatever. But I thought it was kind of funny, just that extra, slight at Isaiah.
Yeah, the hate for Isaiah is strong in this series, that's for sure. So I'll just add my ideas for an alternative title for this episode is "Be Like Mike," except you don't want to be like Mike. And this episode does a good job of showing as Sammy says, the incorporation of Michael Jordan Inc. essentially, and essentially the dark side of it, or the downside of it as well. And it's an incredible episode. I was so excited to see this episode because a lot of our memories and a lot of our feelings towards Michael Jordan is kind of wrapped up in the pop culture phenomenon that he'd become, and all the things that sort of were a part of that, from the commercials, the endorsements, the movies, or the movie. All of that was I think speaks to a lot of what we experienced in our sort of formative years.
Does it surprise you, or I guess I'll go with surprise. Does it surprise you that Spike Lee hasn't been as involved with the Last Dance, that you would expect him to do a lot more, considering his background with Jordan, considering he's a director with like a lot of documentaries? Do you think it's surprising that Spike's not like a producer or something?
Well, no, I mean, I don't think it's surprising that he's not a producer. I mean, these things, these things come from different places. Spike Lee may not have had any time to be involved with it. He may not have been asked to be a part of it. I think he's in it the right amount. If the story was really more about just MJ Inc., then maybe he would be a bigger character in that. But the story, and this is something we've talked about before, the story is a little broader than just Michael Jordan for Spike Lee to take up any significant time. That being said, I mean, Spike Lee didn't play a small part in creating in helping create the magic of Michael Jordan's cultural phenomenon. So I think he's in it the right amount.
I mean, I don't know. I guess I am a little surprised. He hasn't really had an interview section yet, though, right?
No, he hasn't been interviewed.
Yeah. So we'll see if he pops up in any in the next few episodes. But yeah, in terms of involvement, I guess it doesn't matter. Like just like what Jigar said, anybody could kind of start these things up, and it could be multiple reasons why he's not behind the scenes. But in terms of just being a more present person within the documentary, I guess I'm a little surprised.
Well, I mean, he has mentioned the documentary in his Instagram feed, and there's enough archival footage of him that I can see if they didn't have time, in terms of production constraints and schedules, to not interview him. I don't miss him in this context, anyways. but I think I think he was a big part of that whole phenomenon. And it's interesting because it was this episode basically cements Michael Jordan in the pantheon of those iconic 80s pop culture celebrities. We're talking about your Michael Jackson, your Prince, your Whitney Houston's, Madonna's. He is of that caliber in terms of purely pop culture phenomenon. And that's quite, rarefied air, pardon the pun, to be playing in. And this episode does an amazing job of showing how that happened and how it took off that way.
I don't think we'll ever see anybody with that level of fame again. Like you and I were talking about this a little while ago. Where like everything's so kind of fractured now and it's all niche now. And you can get a certain level of fame, but like I think it was the second episode where that dude who works for the Bulls was talking about how like Jordan would get mobbed after the game, and then he would have all the reporters, and he'd have to leave. And then before the game, there was like the Make a Wish Foundation kid that he had to hang out with, and then there'd be people at the hotel, and like on and on and on, just a sea of people. I don't think we'll ever see that again. Just that level of like fame and like just the demand for a piece of him. And he was doing this all without a cell phone. Like my man was chilling, man. Like he would have had demands for tickets constantly if he was like just a few years later.
And without the internet too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the idea that he was, especially after the Olympics, he had just become an international superstar, and that I believe it's this era that when we talked about this in the first episode about how Michael Jordan is one of the few people who've transcended the sport that he played, and it's really this episode shows you how that happened, and I like Sammy says, that's just not something that happens anymore. Everyone has their niche. You have certain stars that are, international superstars. And I would argue that a lot of those people are sort of the hangovers from the 80s and 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Someone like a Tom Cruise or someone who's known internationally, kind of came up in that era. I mean, I can't think of anyone that's that level now that, you know, that can be compared to, as Michael Jordan has been a number of times in this series, a god of sorts.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, you're right.
No, I'm just gonna say even in the NBA now, like there's players like Durant and Curry and stuff like that are well known, but it's not the same level where like they're just camping out in the hotel room.
Yeah, they're well respected, but yeah, for sure, there's that kind of that reach for the broader audience, the kind of the love that goes across everybody from every part of the world. I mean, LeBron's popular, but not everybody loves LeBron.
Yep.
But it's funny that you for your title, Sam, you said incorporation.
Incorporation, yeah, the start
Incorporation.
of all the yeah.
So that's actually a good kind of like jump into the next section because of into the Dream Team section of the documentary. It's like, well, another title for this episode could have been "Suck It, Reebok," because that was pure like Michael Jordan being who he is, who's just sort of competitive. But I think what they also maybe they're kind of missing from their description is loyal. So when you're on his side, he kind of sticks up for you no matter what. And just covering up that Reebok sign or Reebok logo on his Olympic uniform with the flag. I mean, it's sort of like a nice middle finger, but a patriotic one.
Well, I mean, talk about a shrewd businessman. I mean, that's essentially what it came down to for me is like he understood what the brand, his personal brand was and meant. And I love that moment in the car where the camera's behind him in the back seat, and he's like, "Well, wait till these motherfuckers see what I got for them." And he's like, "These guys," he goes, "This asshole's telling me that they're not going to give me their gold medal if I don't show the logo." He's like, "Wait till they see what I got from." And I mean, it is kind of a genius move.
Mm-hmm.
Like on the one level, yeah, it is a great kind of a business mind. But I think that when you even kind of boil it down to its most simplistic root, that's him just being competitive and being loyal. And that just kind of that's his personality, no matter what he's venturing off to.
100%. He was on Team Nike, and that's when it comes to the sports branding and that sort of stuff. I mean, his team was Nike, and he was loyal to that team, just as he was loyal to the Bulls on the court. It's such a baller move, to be honest, because it's like, he covers up the Reebok logo so they don't get what they want, and B, they can't really complain about it because it's without seeming unpatriotic. So yeah, just a total baller move.
One of the things we don't kind of ever acknowledge with a lot of NBA players is, Denny, you mentioned this like loyalty, but you're signed to Nike and you're signed to the Chicago Bulls. But the Chicago Bulls, and we've seen this already for the first 2 or 3 episodes, the Chicago Bulls were kind of dirty in the way they were treating Pippen, treating other players and stuff like this. So your relationship with your primary employer, I guess for lack of a better term, is a little rocky and it's not quite as steady. But for the most part, like Kobe's one of the few who went from Adidas to Nike, but like most players don't really kind of jump ship, right? They kind of just stay with Nike or they stay with Adidas, whatever it may be. And so that again is like kind of heightens why Jordan was so frustrated with the Bulls and the organization and Jerry Krause. They're stabbing him in the front a little bit.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
But yeah, but at least Mike didn't sit there and cry and whine and then just left, right? He kind of like, all right, I'll find other ways. Mm-hmm. And he made a lot of dollars like outside of the Bulls. But he still remained loyal to the Bulls, where most people would just be, all right, I'm gone.
Well, yeah, and I think we'd be remiss not to thank Mama Jordan, Dolores, for making MJ take that Nike meeting, because he was all about
that ear.
Yeah, he was all about those Adidas, and of course Adidas was not in a position to really, make Michael Jordan his own shoe, and so Dolores basically told him, like, you have to go and listen to him. That's all you got to do. Just go and listen to him. She made him go to that meeting, and credit to her, and of course credit to Phil Knight for seeing what the future held for his own brand, but also for what Michael Jordan was going to mean to Nike as well.
These 2 episodes focus on a lot of controversies and quote unquote scandals with Jordan. And the one with the shoes that they didn't bring up with the whole sneaker pimps thing. Remember that when the kids were getting killed in like Southside Chicago and some of the more sketchier parts of the American cities, and kids were getting shot, and so
kids were getting jumped. Yeah, jumped. Yeah. It was a thing. You would get jumped for your Jordans, but yeah, they kind of skip over that.
I thought that was weird because it's like this whole thing was just about all these criticisms of Jordan, and that was a big one at the time because it was like they asked him to do something, but I'm like, I don't know what you wanted him to do.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember specifically in time, because that just seemed like across the board throughout the years, not just within the time, not within the time frame of the 90s, but I guess the documentary would have took a different turn. And how do you kind of go back to the main story of it too? But yeah, no, I was just as surprised as you guys that there wasn't just a bit of a mention, even just to kind of emphasize how what these shoes were doing to the populace.
Yeah, because nobody's jumping like LA Gear or like
British Knights.
Bullet. Like that was also that's how prominent the shoes were, man. People are getting jumped.
Yeah, well, my first pair of Jordans was the Jordan 3s, and I was in the 8th grade, so that was 88. And I brought those shoes to school, but I brought it in my bag, and I only wore them in the halls.
Yeah.
And then when I left school, they went back in the bag because I knew I was going to get rolled.
They were just show shoes.
Yeah, well, yeah. I wanted to make sure I had shoes to show by the end of the day. So.
But what an amazing confluence of things that had to come together. Like, so you have, Jordan's agent realizing that this guy was going to need to be marketed as a golfer and not a basketball player. So he's being marketed as someone outside of a team. And that is an amazing stroke of genius as well. And then for Nike to be in that moment creating this new Air Sole, which completely dovetails with what Michael Jordan is, as he says in the documentary, Michael plays in the air. And for all of that to just sort of come together, it's something we've touched on in the past, where it's it's the right person, meeting his time, meeting the history at the right moment. And it's just one of those things that hasn't happened again. It's kind of like with, and I think we've touched on this before, is with Star Wars and George Lucas taking all the toy rights. It was unheard of, and once he did it, now it's just a thing you do. Players now just do these big endorsements if their game warrants it, and it's just become part of the process. But this was kind of revolutionary.
Yeah, there was that moment with Howard White, the Nike executive. We've seen him in a number of other documentaries, the Air Jordan 1 documentaries. But he had a moment where he's like, we're giving all this money and this shoe to a rookie who hasn't done anything. And that was also the start of that too, because now a lot of kids come into the league and they sign. I think LeBron's initial contract was like 80 million or 70 million or something with Nike right off the bat when he hadn't done anything. But Jordan even mentioned it in this in this episode, but that his game drove the marketing. And Jordan had this great line where he said, like, if I was scoring like 2 points a game, I wouldn't do any of this. Like, I'd be embarrassed. And he's right. Like, if he wasn't putting the numbers up, so it's in a weird way, when people talk about like the magic of the moment or the pressure of the moment, Jordan also realized he had to deliver for Nike too, right? Like, because he had to justify the contract and the sales and everything else, the Gatorade, the McDonald's, like, so he had to deliver. He painted himself in a good corner.
And a shout out to the the filmmaking of this episode. We've talked about every episode having a great montage of Jordan or one of the other players on the court, scored to amazing music, and this episode is no exception. They actually did a montage of endorsements with Special Ed's song I Got It Made, and it was just amazing. I loved it.
Special Ed's still making money in 2020.
He sure is. And the other thing is, what was amazing is, even though they didn't touch on the whole thing of kids getting jumped for the shoes, when they interviewed Nas, he talks about how having a pair of Jordans was like having a lightsaber. Like, it was just like this magical thing.
Yeah.
And again, that's something that just doesn't really exist anymore. Part of that's because manufacturing's gotten so cheap. Everyone can get anything at this point for a decent price.
But the Jordan shoes still pull in. Like, they're still one of the most successful lines. That's another thing. When people argue about the difference between LeBron and Jordan, Jordan's shoe line still goes through the roof. And like, LeBron's sales are all right, but Jordan, like, and he hasn't played for like 20 years basically. His sales are still strong, and like whenever they get dropped, the new ones that come out, and when they do the retro ones too, those go through the roof.
Yeah, and Jordan's usually top 3 every year in sales. Usually number 1 from the past few years. Like, I mean, I think Adidas sometimes kicks up, but speaking of sneakers, how about that section where they were talking about the whole Jordan might have said, Republicans buy sneakers too.
Yeah.
Because of the whole Senate race in North Carolina.
Yeah, that was an amazing section to sort of watch, because it's while it was a big issue back then, it seems like it's something that would definitely be an issue today. And the question, I think, what it comes down to is, was he right?
Yes.
And I think he was. The thing is that people often forget in these situations is context and nuance. Michael Jordan was a businessman. He never said he was anything more than a basketball player. And he's right. Republicans do also buy shoes. And for him to, publicly make political statements is just not good business. And it would take focus away from the only thing he cared about, which is the game. And, what people don't realize is that he mentions this in the documentary. He said, well, I may not have said anything publicly, but I did donate to his campaign. And another thing, we talked about Spike Lee earlier. In the 90s, Spike Lee was around this time was making Malcolm X, his masterpiece about the civil rights leader. And at a certain point, Warner Brothers shut the film down and said, there's no more money for you. And so Spike Lee had to go hat in hand to, the richest celebrity African Americans he knew. And of course, one of them was Michael Jordan. There was Prince. There was Janet Jackson. There was Bill Cosby, but before all this stuff happened, and many others that escape my mind right now. But Spike Lee tells this amazing story where he went to MJ and was like, "Look, I need money to finish this movie, and these are the other people who've helped out. Prince has helped out. Janet Jackson helped out. Magic Johnson has helped out." And MJ's answer is, "How much did Magic give?" And so Spike tells him, and of course, Michael, being as competitive as he is, outbids whatever Magic Johnson gave him, and he says, Spike Lee says he'll never say how much it was, but Michael Jordan did end up paying or donating more than Magic. So I mean, he did do things. He just wasn't interested in being public about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very much the attitude for the longest time, really, for celebrities in general, is that they didn't want to become somebody stuck in the middle between political fights. You were just, if you're an entertainer, you're just an entertainer. You're trying to entertain everybody. But I mean, to clarify, Jordan said he just said that as a joke on the bus to a couple of teammates, and then it gets blown up. So, but the section I think, was a great moment in the documentary where, once again, it kind of like it shows you the authenticity of Jordan. He's just like, hey man, I lead by example. If what I do inspires you, great.
Yeah.
And if not, then maybe I'm not the guy you should be following. It's just like he doesn't need everybody's love and attention, as these two episodes actually tell you, right? He's just trying to do what he's doing, and if people love him, great. But if not, he's not there for you.
What people overlook is that when you're like at a wedding, for example, and a DJ drops Michael Jackson, everybody gets up. The grandmothers gets up, the little kids gets up, everybody reports to the dance floor. And you only get a handful of things in pop culture that are like that pure, that cut across everybody. And Jordan, as you see those montages, now especially cut to like LL Cool J and everything else now, it's like Jordan was that one thing where it was singular. It didn't matter if you were a rich white dude or a kid from the south side of Chicago. It didn't matter if you're rich or poor. None of those things mattered, because when you saw Jordan play, you're like, yo, that was fresh. Like, how did he do that, right? So if he had been political and he'd been outspoken, he would have started dividing people, and then that would have reduced the essence and the value of that.
100%. And I mean, up until that point, I don't think very few, sports celebrities had done what Muhammad Ali had done. I mean, Muhammad Ali is sort of the example and the standard bearer when it comes to making political statements, but it cost him his prime, and that's not for everybody, and nor should everyone be expected to be, that level of committed to social causes, when that's not what your main desire or goal is in life. That doesn't mean you don't care. That doesn't mean you don't, believe in those causes. It just means that, you're not going to be public about it because it affects everything else. And I think now, it's popular to be woke because it's also kind of cheaper to be woke.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone can, tweet out some pithy remark and be woke and be accepted. It's harder to be silent and maybe do stuff behind the scenes and then no one maybe ever really knows about it. And that seems to be what Jordan did back in the day.
Yeah, it's like I'm gonna vote for Obama like a couple of years back or whatever. And I'm like, well, that's not a political statement. Like, that's a really easy, cheap thing. Like you're saying, like you're not really taking a risk here, right? Or like, we gotta help poor people. Like, people say things like that now, and you're like, well, that's not really like profound, or like you're not really doing anything. And Jordan had that good line, like, as when his mom was saying, like, I think you should like help out Harvey Gantt. I want to keep saying Harvey Dent, but when he says Harvey Gantt, and he responds to his mom, and he's like, I don't know who this is. Like, he also had to realize too the association. Like, he messed up with the golf stuff, and we'll get into that because like he had bad associates, but this was something he kind of kept learning throughout his career. It seems that he had to figure out who these people were that were around him and that he was supporting, because his shadow was so huge.
Well, yeah, and I think Obama, who makes an appearance in this episode, also has a very nuanced point of view on this whole thing. Well, he does say, well, he was somewhat disappointed because Jesse Helms was just so reprehensible, but he also gave Jordan a little bit of leniency when he said, like, but Michael seemed to, you still figuring all this out. I mean, he was still trying to work out who he was and who he wanted to be, and so it's understandable that he didn't want to make any waves at that point.
Yeah, and it is such a contrast to today's star. No matter if you're like entertainment or sports, it's like it's part of your branding that you immediately create this woke social justice character, somebody who has I guess a point of view. But I don't know what that point of view sometimes has to do with if your team is winning or losing. And that's what, for Jordan, I think that's what it all boils down to. Everything was nice, all the endorsement, all the cash, but if he's losing, then it's all pointless.
It's meaningless. Yeah, it's all about the game.
Was it Jed Bushler? I think it was in the second episode or the third episode. I think it was Jed Bushler or Will Purdue. One of them. They were saying how like.
Sorry, when you say second or third, do you mean episode 5 or 6?
No,
or do you
The
mean
Last Dance.
Previous weeks.
Weeks. There's I think it was Jed Bushler, but he was saying how the first time that Jordan had won a championship, they saw all this emotion come out of him, and up till then,
Will Purdue.
Yeah, and up till then, it was just like all anger and frustration.
Well, Will Purdue was your teammate. Maybe you'd show a lot of anger and frustration as well.
Valid. But I think that's the other thing too, was that Jordan's in a position where, like, you're playing basketball, you only get 5 years or 7 years. You're not like Brad Pitt, where you can be famous for like 10, 15, 20 years. Like, how many years has Tom Cruise been like super famous, right? Like, you get a window of time, and I think Jordan recognized that window, and he's like, look, I got to put everything on hold. I got to win championships. I got to do all these things. Then we can deal with everything else after. And I think that's why he kind of bottled up all those emotions.
Well, for basketball players, your prime years are your 20s and into your maybe early 30s. Would that be fair? Like, once you're getting into your 30s, you're on the downward slide usually.
And the team has to be good too.
Yeah, you got to get to work, and you can't really dilly-dally with all this other stuff if you really want to win championships and play great ball.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's just, once again, it's a personality thing. He's just thinking of the moment. He's not worried. I don't think he's worried too much far down the line. He's just worried about the W for that night. And if guys are slacking, it doesn't take much, studying to see who's not doing something right or who's kind of being a little lazy.
Will Purdue.
So the game's only 48 minutes, right?
Well, especially if it's when you're comparing it to what Jordan's doing, right? So it's in stark contrast to whatever he's doing. If you're not pulling your weight, it's going to show.
And I wonder too if that impacted how we viewed politicians as well, because nobody's ever really been like the Michael Jordan of politics. There's been people who are like the Michael Jordan of like directing and other things, but like the Michael Jordan of politics, it doesn't really exist.
I just don't think that the politics can really even make that happen. That's just not possible, I don't think.
Yeah, politics is a little more complex than basketball.
Yeah. Yeah, so as far as like comparing Jordan to the current crop of players and their wokeness, I mean, I think Jordan was singular in his vision for the game, and you could see that certainly at the Olympics, where everything that was going around this dream team. At the end of the day on the court, it just came down to what was going down with the Bulls. And Pippen and Jordan went to town on Tony Kukoc. And Sammy, I think you've got a title in mind for that section.
Yeah, Tony's Tears.
Tony's Tears. My God, these guys were brutal. It's funny because I didn't have really strong memories of that whole incident, but seeing how just brutal they were, and they, in hindsight, they were saying that it was really just about Krause and it wasn't about Tony. but I have to say I felt bad about it for Tony, and over the years I've probably made fun of Tony Kukoc. But I have a newfound respect for him.
You can tell that even in the interview, like 20 some odd years later, there was still a little bit of a hurt. They didn't know me.
Once you get to know me, I'm a nice guy.
I didn't know what was going on, but they didn't even know me.
Yeah.
It's rough because one of the commentators talk about how when he comes back during the final for the gold medal match, and the guy goes, Tony came back and he played well after being completely emasculated. Like, whoa, that was brutal.
Yeah.
Quite the choice of words. I mean, I don't think it went down that badly. I mean, they played intense defense on him, but emasculated.
But he had 4 points.
Sure.
And to be fair, Michael was really fair to him in the interview, and he said, look, he was playing against a team of the best players in the world. So, he goes, you can't fault him for that.
For sure.
And the Dream Team, to be fair, they destroyed everybody anyways.
Yeah.
Right? I think the one team maybe got like under 30 points or something. Like, for the most part, they destroyed everybody. So they obviously singled out Tony, but everybody got crushed that summer. So
it's true. But, what do you guys think about just that whole idea of, the U.S. team is just terrible up until that point. And so they decide the only way to fix it is to just literally get the best players in the world to be the team. Do you think that was fair?
Well, what was happening, though, was all the other countries had their professional players on their Olympic teams forever. Mm-hmm. So that's when the U.S. were like, okay, well, up until then, we were sending our college guys, but why can't we send our pros too?
Yeah, I suppose that's fair. But, once it actually happens, it's just like, oof.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole kind of, we'd have to look back at what was going on with not only the U.S. Team in the kind of the time before 92, but what was happening in the other countries.
Yeah, the thing too is like the other countries were starting as well at that point, right? Like Croatia had Tony Kukoc. He was their big, like, their franchise player. Like, most countries had, like, one player, maybe two players, like, noticeably good, or, like, NBA level, or were actually even playing in the NBA. So, I don't know if it was necessarily fair or unfair, but this was at least the start of kind of putting those seeds in so that there are more international players now, and they're a lot better now, and they do a lot more. So, we're still sending like NBA players to these things, but the competition is a lot more fierce, and they're not blowing teams out by like 40 points at the half and things like that.
Well, I think it's also it was a watershed mark for the NBA in terms of its global reach. At the end of the day, I don't think it was really even about gold medals. I think it was about the NBA extending its reach beyond, the 50 states or 50 whatever states, right? So in that regard, I think it was important that those NBA players ended up playing that year, and for them, it just seemed like it was just like a summer hangout. It seems to me that for them it was all about those practices and those great, amazing footage of those guys practicing. And can you imagine being there and seeing these guys, the top players in arguably all of the NBA history, just going at it full tilt?
Well, the practices themselves could be like a whole documentary, just like a few like interviews here and there, and just watch the practice. Actually, from one of those practices in this episode, that brought on like a potential another title for me for this. It was like, well, it could be like, who's all playing, or AKA wasn't me.
Yes.
Because the whole like leaving Isaiah out, and Jordan was like, look, you can believe what you want to believe, but it wasn't me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a huge controversy, after the episode aired, especially after, I guess, a couple episodes before that, in the whole incident of walking off the court. Isaiah Thomas has not had a good run with this Last Dance series.
It's his last dance too.
Yeah, it seems like it's his last dance, yeah. But, they do a good job of, and Michael's very shrewd about saying, like, look, I do not like the man, but I respect his game. I respect everything else about what he's done for himself. But as a player on the court, I just don't like him. And man, he just I don't know. I don't know what you guys thought about the whole thing about him getting snubbed. I mean, some say it was magic that had more to do with it. Michael clearly is washing his hands of it. What are your thoughts?
You touched upon it already, that this was clearly like spring break basically for basketball players. Like, they knew that the competition they were going to face was not going to be formidable. And not only that, but they already had the greatest team, like literally the greatest team ever assembled in the history of team sports. So they knew that there was not going to be a lot of pressure, and it wasn't like, there was nobody going to have to worry about who's going to take the last shot or anything like this. Like, they were killing these teams early on. And I think part of it too is just because they knew that they were going to have so much fun and they're chilling in Barcelona, that it didn't make sense to invite Isaiah and have all this tension. And Jordan alluded to that too. Like, if Isaiah had come, it would have changed the whole chemistry. So this was just a way for them to just have a spring break and have no pressure and like hang out with equals, like
enjoy the people you're with.
Mm-hmm. So I think it was fair. I think they did the right move.
Yeah, for sure. And over the years, even prior to this documentary and the Dream Team documentary, there's always like talks about who might have been the people who shut him out. And I think the people who were most kind of vocal about it after the fact was Karl Malone and Scottie Pippen. So, and then about Magic beef with Jordan, beef with Bird.
Mm-hmm.
So, sorry, man. Like, if you had a better attitude, then maybe you could have joined the fun.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I don't think he has a leg to stand on in terms of that whole dynamic. I mean, he knew who he was and his dynamic with each of those guys, and for him to show up in Barcelona, that would have been about him and not about the team.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think ultimately it was probably the right decision. It's just, man, it's just kind of fun to watch.
Yeah. Well, he says in the Last Dance, I met the criteria. I'm like, yeah, but so what? A lot of people who apply to Harvard meet the criteria. Not everybody gets into Harvard, son.
For sure. And this goes down to, anything in life. Like, if you ask any top performing companies, right, like they don't always need everyone to be a franchise player.
Mm-hmm.
They need people who can be a part of the team. And those people are just as important, if not more, to success. And so, for Isaiah to feel like, well, I met the criteria. Well, yeah, a lot of people can meet the criteria, but you were an asshole.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to work with an asshole. That happens on film sets all the time. You hear about these genius cinematographers or whoever, and you realize that they're a real pain in the ass to work with, or an actor who is, a huge celebrity and would get your movie made, but he's got a bad reputation. You don't want to work with that guy. No one needs that grief.
Speaking of non-franchise players, if you watch the Dream Team documentary, there's a really great moment in it where, and you kind of see a little bit of this in The Last Dance, but like Magic Johnson would leave the hotel room and people would just be screaming and magic, magic, magic. And like Larry Bird would leave the hotel room and people would just be screaming like Larry, Larry, Larry. And Jordan, of course, it'd just be pandemonium. John Stockton, who looks like just an ordinary white guy, would leave the hotel room. Nobody would bat an eye. He's one of the 50th greatest players on the NBA, but nobody would like look at him. He's just walking around in shorts with his wife and his kids. He's got a camcorder. He's doing like like a traveler thing, and he's just like shooting video as he goes along, just checking the sights. Nobody's bothering him.
Just one very slow golf clap in the distance.
Yes. And then in the evenings, he just goes and joins the Dream Team because he's on it. He's earned his place there. Destroys out all the other countries, and then goes back to his shorts. That's it. John Stockton, ladies and gentlemen.
Maybe that was the ideal life. Maybe that was one that Jordan wanted.
Oh.
The other quote from that section that I just loved was when they talk about, the impact that Michael Jordan and that Dream Team had, and how by the end of it, Michael had, essentially cemented himself as the alpha of the alphas. And I was like, wow, that's just, yeah. And that's so perfectly stated. with everything that went on in Barcelona, at the end of the day, Michael was, and I think will always be the alpha of the alphas when it comes to basketball.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a weird thing too, and we saw it in the beginning of this episode 5. The way that Magic and Larry Bird and Jordan were kind of talking in the back of Madison Square Garden there's a shorthand, or like they're all in the same level now, right? They've all like won championships and stuff like this. They're all like NBA greats. They're all the face, not just the face of their franchise, but the face of the NBA. And it's one of those things where like we don't kind of talk about this. Like you go up through those levels, like there's got to be a shorthand when like Lucas and Spielberg and Scorsese and those guys get together versus some guy who just won Sundance and like he's only got his first film out. You know what I mean? Like you have to earn your way up to those levels to like be like with those people and like be able to connect with them and to be friendships and stuff like that. All right, so what do we got for episode 6? Anybody got any titles for episode 6?
Like so many, once again on this one, but it's sort of like I think the title for this one, like the main title for me, anyways, would be "Yo, Stan, can I borrow a cigarette?" It's just a nice like. I really like this episode because I felt like there was more sort of just verite kind of moments, kind of a little more candid, not so much plot driven. I mean, it's still doing the overall arc, but just the little tidbits, like an extension of that. The traveling cocaine circus kind of a theme where Jordan was sitting there. They're all drinking Miller Lights after winning 60 games, and then he's telling the story about how like back in the day, brothers would be drinking a case by halftime, and they'd be like getting cigarettes from the coach. So like, "Yo, Stan, can I borrow a cigarette?"
Denny, so, when you look at those guys, like Pippen had that nice suit on, Ron Harper had the nice suit on, Jordan had the nice suit.
Yeah,
we've seen a lot of cigars, the drinking. Are these guys kind of like our Rat Pack, our generation's Rat Pack, in a sense?
That's a really good comparison. Yeah, for true. I mean, those were the guys that I know I looked up to from a fashion standpoint. Like one of the first GQ magazines I ever bought as a kind of early teen was Jordan on the cover, and also Spike Lee, but yeah, that's why I wore ties and dressed clothes to high school. You guys, what do you guys think?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the Gambler episode. I was surprised that they went that deep on that whole thing. I didn't think Michael would allow it, but it seems like Michael actually asked for it. He wanted to talk about it and be open about it. And it's amazing to watch some of the bad decisions he made in that time. Like, obviously the going to the casino and all that stuff, which he still defends, but then sitting down, like shutting out the media, and then finally deciding he's going to talk about it to the media. He gets Ahmad Rashad to come out with a camera and sits there wearing sunglasses during the whole interview, which destroys any credibility you have when people are accusing you of doing, bad things. You sit there in sunglasses. It looks like you're hiding something, and yet you're, being arrogant about the whole thing. And which is, it's kind of refreshing to see, because you realize that, he wasn't perfect. Maybe on the court it was a different thing, but he was not a perfect man. And some argued that for Michael Jordan to be gambling, thousands of dollars on, a golf game or what have you, I mean, it's literally like you're like betting $20 on a golf game, which I think is probably apt. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think it was sort of a media created thing where it's like, you build up someone only to find ways to ultimately break them down?
Yeah. The issue isn't if he's gambling or not. If he has a gambling problem, that's his issue and he needs to seek professional help. The problem is that we have an arrogant problem, and we can, if you ask people what are the 5 like tattletale signs that somebody has a gambling problem, most people can't tell you. Like, we have these like psychology things where we think we know what we're talking about, but we don't. And so you really shouldn't be talking about like these things. And if Jordan really did have a problem, whatever, then somebody like Ahmad Rashad, who was really close to him or still is close to him, he's got to pull him aside and say, yo, son, like, you need to like figure this out or do something like that. There needs to be an intervention of some kind.
Yeah, and it's also like he said, like, if I had a gambling addiction or a problem, I'd be out on the street by now.
Yeah.
Like, I think I think it was him or someone else in the episode says it wasn't a gambling problem, it was a competition problem.
Yeah.
He's just a super competitive. I mean, he was sitting there literally, betting on those coin tosses with the security guys, and Jason Hare, the director of the series, has this great story of when one of the early days when he met Mike for this documentary. Him and MJ were driving to the stadium, or he was along for a ride, and as soon as they got in the car, Michael Jordan's like, "How much you want to bet we'll see more than 10 Jordans on the street between here and the stadium?"
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, "Oh, okay, sure, I'll take that." It wasn't for money or anything, but he just wanted to see if he can get one up on this guy who he just met.
Yeah.
And of course, by the time they get there, they see 3 or 4. And as they approach the stadium, he realized that it was like some sort of a convention of like sneakerheads or something like that.
No, it was a Jordan Classic game.
It was a Jordan. That's right. It was a Jordan Classic. That's right. And of course, immediately there's like 30, 100, Air Jordans, being worn. And so it seems to me that it really was a competition thing, and it's just the way he's made up. And I don't know that it was a real problem. I think maybe there was a problem in terms of the people he was hanging out with.
Yeah.
May not have been fully vetted, but that's hard to say at this point.
Well, I mean, going back to your original question, is it media created or is it a real problem? I mean, he goes by a different standard, just like you have both mentioned. He has a completely different level of cash that none of us can ever will reach. And was it media created in a sense? Sure, I think a lot of it was because A, you got a story, and B, traditionally, people have always frowned on gambling for the longest time. So, for Jordan, as long as he's not in debt and he's not like selling his kids or what, then whatever, man, you can afford it.
Well, you have to also wonder, right? Like, if you're a reporter and you see this guy gambling on a golf game, what you might make in a year, I bet that would probably seem weird and odd and story worthy to you. And this is, I mean, I'm someone who works in media, and so I mean, I'm not giving the media a pass on this because to me it seems like it was blown out of proportion. There may have been some valid remarks in terms of who he was dealing with and betting with, but ultimately it all seemed pretty above board.
And the last couple of years, about the last 5 years or so, gambling has become a lot more legal now in the states. Different states have been passing these regulations, and you can gamble on games and tip off and all kinds of things legally now at casinos. So, like what you were saying before, Denny, where like people do frown on it. It was a little bit like the marijuana thing from back in the day, the way that people kind of frowned on it. And if you do grass and whatever, you're going to go down this road to ruin. And now it's like people do have legitimate issues, and gambling is still like a problem. But for the most part, people can go to a casino and go bet a couple of things or whatever and then leave. And like we've all done it. I think we've all gone ourselves like together and left, and we haven't lost our shirts. So it's possible. And I think with Jordan, the fact that he has clearly ended up becoming a billionaire when so many other NFL and NBA players are completely broke. Latrell Sprewell signed a $125 million deal. He's living on his NBA pension. So the fact that Jordan still managed to become a billionaire means he was somehow able to keep some of the money somehow, or people invested it or kept it away from him.
Exactly.
Were you surprised that they didn't use Kenny Rogers the gambler for one of the montages in this episode?
I mean, I don't think it would have worked with the amazing soundtrack that this series has had up until now. But maybe like a remix of it. I'm sure that that song's been sampled by some hip hop artist.
Hopefully.
Wyclef did some Kenny Rogers. Yeah, I think it was Wyclef.
It was Wyclef. That's right.
So what about you guys? What else stuck out from episode 6 for you guys? Any titles, potential titles for this one?
I was just thinking about that Kenny Rogers thing, and that's when I was like, know when to hold him, know when to fold him. So that's why. But also too, when they had the Ahmad Rashad stuff, I was thinking like they should have just had Claire Huxtable just sort this all out.
So Sam, anything else stuck out about episode 6 for you?
Yeah, one thing that we should acknowledge as well, and I think people forget about this, is Ahmad Rashad had a huge football career. It's the way we look at Barkley now. Like, people are so used to seeing Barkley on TV, they forget that he was like a really good NBA player. He never won a ring, but he was a prominent NBA player. And it's the same thing, like, because we grew up with that era of Ahmad Rashad basically being our NBC Inside Stuff guy. And you're like, oh yeah, I forgot you had this whole like career before. It's like if you just grew up watching OJ in Naked Gun as Norver, and you forget that he was like this phenomenal running back for the Buffalo Bills. And you're like, oh yeah.
The Fred Dryer, Hunter.
Yeah. It's just those little things too. You forget, like when you start to pull back and you start to see the culture as a whole. We started this episode talking about like 90s TV shows, and it's like, I kind of wish that the documentary is compressed, and I get this part, but like I wish there was a little bit more reference to like the actual culture and like you know what I mean, the way that Seinfeld just kind of came in and did a cameo and then left. Mm-hmm. It's like, but the funny thing is that as big as Seinfeld was at that era, he was still like, Jordan was still even bigger, which is crazy.
Yes, Seinfeld was completely awkward walking through that locker room.
Hey, Phil.
Yeah. Where everywhere else, Sam feels completely comfortable, or he feels like he's the top guy in the room. Yeah.
Well, my favorite part was when he's about to walk out and he points to the chalkboard. He's like, "Yeah, that's not going to work," and the room is just silent.
Yeah. Well, I think like he walks by one. I don't know if he was a security guy or whatever. The security guy actually mumbles something like, "Yeah, just get it to Jordan." But like he said it quietly enough so that he hoped just Seinfeld heard it.
That's the Doug Collins thing, right? Like, you inbound the ball to Jordan, the rest of you get out of the way. Mm-hmm. What about for you? What stood out for you for episode 6, Den?
I mean, another part of this was like, I could, kind of title as Poor Charles Smith. Oh, and this episode gets into the whole, like, how the Knicks are ascending since the Pistons kind of got out, and they were the new tough guys. But then that series for the 93 playoffs with the Knicks, that was like incredible.
Yeah.
I remember that, watching that as a kid. And I completely remember that game 5 where it's just boiling down to that last few seconds. And Charles Smith was under the basket. You got Horace, you got Pippen, you got Michael just swatting and swatting and swatting. The guy had no chance to get that ball in. Yeah. And that was like one of the best defensive sequences like ever.
And no foul call, too. Like, that ball was bopping like a pinball game. And you're like, somebody's going to call it or somebody's going to... You know what I mean? Like, the game was so much more fun then. Like, because you're on the edge of your seat, and that could go literally any way.
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, like, I guess a lot of times, especially in playoff games, the last minute or so, the refs just let them play.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it looked... I guess you have to watch it in slow-mo, but there was nothing that was really stood out as, no, that's a foul.
Yes. So I have a question, though. The episodes before, we watched the Detroit Pistons, and then this one we watched the battles with the New York Knicks. Does the finals always seem kind of anticlimactic in a way? Because it always seems like the battle for the Bulls was getting out of the East. And then once they got there, like Magic was talking about how like Jordan was coming out to destroy Clyde Drexler. He did it pretty efficiently. Like there was the first finals where like Jordan's like, we lost at our home floor, but they played terrible, and we knew we had them. And then they swept them, basically, after that. Like, it always seems like the finals are kind of anticlimactic, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and I think back in those days, once they got over that hump, I remember being like, you would watch the 1990s playoffs, and I would be kicking and banging on my coffee table just because the Bulls were so close, and they would just blow it. Mm-hmm. And then once they got past that hump from 91, it was sort of like, there's no team felt like a real threat.
Yeah.
And I mean, mind you, I was like, 15 years old, and all I ever cared about was the Bulls, and so you didn't you didn't really have that analytical mind about all the other teams. Um, but yeah, it just I do. There's one thing I want to say, that Portland series. I wish they had kind of spent a little more time on it, because I do remember. I think it was that final game 6. Jordan wasn't having a good game.
Mm-hmm.
And that first half, and they brought in the bench, and the bench was actually brought them back, and then they inserted Michael like later into the game, and he just kind of finished it. But that, I think it goes back to what you're saying. Like, you wish there was just more time for more nuances about all the events that were happening, because there's so many great sub stories
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it just seemed like they were just bulldozing over everybody. Especially they bulldozed over the Supersonics in '96.
Yes.
But we'll get to that, I guess, next episode.
Today's the day that the I forgot what year it is. I should have written it down, but it was the first round series when the Denver Nuggets upset the Sonics.
Mm.
It was the first time ever that an 8 seed upset the first seed.
Yes. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, 94, 95 or something like that. I should have written it down, but yeah.
But yeah, there was that really well-known image of Mutombo on the ground with the ball in his hand, and he's just like,
yeah,
biggest smile ever.
Well, I mean, I think we touched on it earlier. Is that they talk the series against Barkley and Phoenix. They Barkley doesn't get enough credit for how good he was as well in that series.
Yeah, for true. And he had he was the MVP of that year.
Mm-hmm.
And even the Dream Team section, if you go back to the Dream Team documentary, like Barkley was sort of the man.
Yeah, he was, and I think it irked Jordan that Barkley was the MVP. That really bugged him. You can tell even to this day.
Well, yeah, since he doesn't speak to the guy.
I like those Suns though. Those Suns were fun.
Yeah, you got Marley, you got Kevin Johnson, you got
KJ,
Danny Ainge.
Danny Ainge again, yeah. Danny Ainge
Don't
double
miss.
dipping.
That's right.
I know. He was Portland the year prior, and then he just jumped onto Suns the next year.
Yeah.
But it's also it was great to see that the interview footage of Barkley, of just what a breath of fresh air he was. I mean, he was fun to watch, and it was amazing during the Olympics where someone asked him about the Kukoc thing, and he just didn't care to be political or take a pass on sharing his opinion. He was like, "Yeah, you got to, you got beat because Chicago should be paying Pippen money." He just didn't care, and I think that's what makes him so unique amongst even especially players today who are much more media savvy.
Yeah.
He just didn't give a shit.
Yep.
And that just was his personal style, and it's just so great to watch.
Is there anything else we got to cover for 5 and 6, or?
So one of the other amazing moments in episode 5 is when they start off with Kobe in the All-Star game, and it's sort of the meeting of generations. It's this a young buck coming in, and it's amazing to see Kobe just say, "Give me the ball. I got Mike," and him wanting to turn it into a one-on-one game, and Michael seeing what he was doing and just respecting the hell out of the Laker boy, as he used to call him. Anyone have any thoughts on what Kobe had to say? Clearly they shot this before his passing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, honestly, especially for this generation, it was a great sigh of relief from my end, from all the frustrations of all the hating on Jordan. So I love, like, when Kobe said, what you get from me is from him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he couldn't have won those championships without Mike's guidance and his advice, and just because for the longest time, if you try to tell everybody, well, Kobe was a bit of just a clone of Jordan, kids wouldn't want to hear that.
Yeah. There's also Kobe didn't care. Like when we talk about how like Jordan loved winning more than he liked hate. Like so when Rodman came on the Bulls, he's like, right, Rodman can help us win. I'll take it. And Kobe's the same way. Like he would have probably preferred if Jordan had been younger or something to go out and destroy him. But because of that level at the end there with Jordan, he was like, I can learn from this guy. And he wanted to take as much knowledge. And you never hear these stories with like LeBron the same way, like trying to learn all these things and trying to grow and like reaching out to people. There's stories of like Kobe reaching out to Tex Winter when he was still on the Bulls, and like Kobe's just asking him like late at night, calling, like waking the old man up, and like he's like, I got questions about the triangle offense, I got questions about this and whatever, and like he had such a hunger and a passion to learn and to get better. And so if he could take it from anybody, because he finished high school and basically like this was his university and his college all at the same time. So if he could take it from anybody, he was happy to do it.
And he wasn't afraid to fail publicly in that on the road to succeeding, which is an incredible lesson for anybody in any walk of life. So it was just so great to see Kobe, so unequivocally state how important Michael Jordan was to his career.
Yeah. No, we should recognize Kobe because it is a valid point. What you're looking forward to the next couple of episodes?
Go ahead, DC.
I am looking forward to the whole practice fight with Steve Kerr. I hope they really break it down like the grassy knoll kind of a thing. Because that's a story you've heard for years.
Yeah.
The full details of.
I'm certainly looking forward to them getting closer to that final championship season, and sort of they did a lot of flashbacking to the past, but I'd love to see more of the story unfolding in 98. So that I'm certainly looking forward to, and then I wonder if they'll get into any of the stuff with his father. Because that I'm curious to see how that affected him from his own mouth. He's been obviously pretty private about it, but it's it's a significant part of his life.
These episodes are supposed to cover baseball, so obviously you're gonna have to acknowledge the dad thing, and it's interesting because it's like Jordan doesn't usually use the word burnout. But like you can tell he's exhausted or he's tired. He uses words like that. And it would have been curious to see if he had not gone off and played baseball, just kind of what would happen to the Bulls. Everyone thinks they just go like 8-0 or something ridiculous like that. I don't think that would happen. But it would have been interesting to see if he had any injuries, if they had managed to like maybe get to the finals and then lose the finals or any of those kind of things. We'll never know, obviously, but I'm always curious to speculate to see what would happen.
Great. Well, I think that about wraps up another episode of Jordan Ain't No Joke. Sammy, do you want to take us out?
Oh, yes. Hang on, let me get the...
And just before Sammy takes us out here, I just want to mention a recommendation for this week. I think a great book would be Phil Knight's Shoe Dog.
Yes.
Which ends right before the Jordan era. But it's a great backstory to the company in terms of what the company was and how it became what it was right up until the point to be ready for someone like Michael Jordan. So it's a great read and I highly recommend it.
And I mentioned the Dream Team documentary as well. That was an NBA TV special. You can dig that up. I think that's probably floating around YouTube. So, but that's also worth checking out just for more of that. They don't have enough of the practice stuff that I wish they kind of did, but as a kind of context for all that's going on in The Last Dance, that's a good one to check out.
Sorry, just to even hop on to what Sammy is talking about. On YouTube, the official Olympics channel does have a lot of those 92 games online, and it's really interesting to watch because there's no commentary, so you can actually hear a lot of the chatter on the floor. So, nice. But for people who want to see those games in a greater context, check them out on YouTube.
And finally, my last recommendation is Space Jam.
The first one.
Yes.
That's right, the first one.
Yes. See it now before LeBron ruins it. That should be the tagline for the second one. So we're going to go out with Tribe Called Quest. His song's called Lyrics to Go. It's not one of their bigger ones, but it's a good one. And of course, it's by Fife Dog. A moment of silence for Fife Dog. But Fife was a big sports fan. His line was, "I'm Jordan with the mic. You want to gamble?" Yes.
Perfect. All right. See you guys next week.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one.